Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to just begin by talking about and exploring with you how this moment that's here, this experience, this instant, is just here and is being, how the moment is being generated, we could say, or being created. This instant is arising effortlessly. And everything essentially is here effortlessly. Everything is appearing, including us, the humans that we feel we are, the beings that we feel we are, imagine ourselves to be, is present. We are present here. Reality, life, all of this is present here effortlessly. Feel the way that that is the case. That somehow, in some way, you can't comprehend, this moment, the presence of what's here is being generated. How? Here it's being generated. We're just sit here doing absolutely nothing as far as what we might think of as action or intention or efforting. And all of it is here. All of it is appearing. All of it is arising. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, visual images, memories, fantasies, little rumblings, all of it, the whole felt sense of everything that's appearing and occurring is just absolutely being produced, isn't it? Your noticing of this moment is being produced, being generated effortlessly. The hearing of this moment is here effortlessly. The seeing of this moment, effortless. What is generating all of this, producing the hearing and the seeing and the feeling and the thinking and the noticing? Just feel how this is just being done inexplicably, spontaneously. And just let yourself relax into that. You are relaxed into that, actually. But yes, you are. Whatever it is that's giving rise to this is what we are. Whatever's producing the appearance that we call reality, the presence that we call reality, is none other than the reality. It's one thing. So we're the appearance of the generator of all of this, and we are the generator of all of this. It's one thing. There's a quality I just invite you to sort of sense, to feel the presence of this quality of reality itself that's giving rise to all of this. That's absolute support. It's the foundation of everything. It is giving rise to everything and supporting everything. It's as if the foundation of this, the basis of this moment is holding this moment. It's complete support, completely held by this, completely in the same way that the vastness of the sea is the absolute support of each wave, inseparable from each wave. But we're completely, that's how supported we are. We can utterly relax into that support that's just here. It's just the very nature. This is just being done. We're being done. That's what I mean by the support. This is the mystery, call it this, the underlying basis of everything, the generator of all of this is no effort is required. Even our doing, our effort, our action isn't possible without this base of support that's doing it all. So you're lying in bed and you wake up in the morning, you're lying in bed, and you might say, well, it takes effort to get up, to make the effort to get up and get yourself to the bathroom, let's say, or whatever, make your coffee or your breakfast. We could say that's a kind of doing, the individual's doing something that takes some amount of doing, some amount of efforting. But the ability to do any of those steps, the movement of the body up out of the bed, the walking, all of the knowledge that's required to make our coffee or our breakfast, all of that is absolutely being given effortlessly. So underlying our effort and our doing is complete, already present, effortless, the energy of life that's fueling all of this. So our effort is actually, underlying our effort is this effortlessness that's just here, fueling all of it, doing all of it, being all of it, shining as all of this. I mean, even you think of the most basic effort of using my muscles to move something. I take effort to like lift up the table that my computer is on, and it takes effort, strength. Where does that strength come from? Where does our strength come from? Where does our capacity to, you can say I'm making effort to articulate the inarticulable, speak about the unspeakable, as I do every Sunday. Where the ability to, yes, sure, there's a certain kind of energy involved, energy engagement, right, to do the act of speaking or the formulating of concepts to share, or whatever it is that I'm doing, let's say. Where is all of that coming from? What is the underlying foundational genesis that's supporting all of that, that's energizing all of my energy, that's the basic, the generator of my own action, the capacity to do anything? Where is that coming from? It's all effortless. It's all, this is what I mean by the support of reality. It's entirely supportive of us all the time. It's living us, it's being us. What more support could there possibly be? And so we can completely relax into that. And we think of something like presence as something I, as an individual, am going to get myself by doing various things to get myself into the state of presence. That's a complete fallacy. The presence of reality is here spontaneously, effortlessly. We are the presence of reality. What do you mean I'm going to do something to get into the presence of reality? The presence of reality is shining here as this very instant, being us, being each of its expressions effortlessly. There you are, you're trying to solve some complex problem, whether it's a thing at work or you're trying to wrap your head around something, try to understand it, and you're thinking, you're making effort to think about something. No problem with that. But where is that capacity to even think coming from? It's effortless. It's just here. The capacity is just here. In other words, everything's being given. Everything is given. Everything is given inexplicably. That's, again, what I mean by the support of this, the absolute support of reality. And there's no separation from that support. And we are reality, so that is the ultimate support. And we can talk about the ocean supporting the waves, but feel yourself as a wave-like emanation of life. And okay, life is supporting me. That feels so good, but you're inseparable from this ground, this foundation that's doing all of this. That's real. That's a real support. It's like it's even beyond like me as an individual recognizing that I'm being supported by something else. It's just seeing that this is nothing but this expression of the energetic expression of whatever the mystery of which we are yet another of its expressions. There's really no getting back to it. Just seeing that this is it, and we are that, and everything is that. Everything, not just some things, everything. Not just certain moments that look a certain way or seem to be a certain way based on how we're describing them, but everything is the beingness of this mystery, of this reality. So just let yourself enjoy that for a few moments, the effortlessness of everything. The effortlessness of consciousness. How this is just here. The knowing of this moment is just here inexplicably, effortlessly, spontaneously. If thoughts are arising, they're just arising effortlessly, spontaneously, somehow. Who knows how? Emotions arising, what we call emotions, whatever they are, these energetic patterns, they're just arising effortlessly, inexplicably, being produced by life. And feel your own vitality, your own aliveness, your own being. And feel the way in which this life is here effortlessly. The beingness, the existence, this vitality, the presence of life itself is here absolutely without explanation, without effort, magically, miraculously, just here. You can't even find the build up to it. It's just here instantly. There's a line in I'm just reminded of this. I was trying to find some metaphor to describe what I was just feeling, and this line from a Rumi poem came to me of, um, we are the mirror as well as the face within it. Um, we are pain and what cures pain. And then the last line, which is the one that really felt like what my sense of this is, we are the sweet cold water and the jar that pours. So it's as if like God is like the jar pouring reality out of itself. And we're the jar, we're the one that's pouring it, and we're what's being poured out, we're all of it. And so this constant stream of nourishment and vitality, it's constant, isn't it? Explosively here, effortlessly. Explosive but effortless, powerful but effortless. And I think about even at the level of the organism, the physical organism, if we want to talk about that. I mean, what, 1 billion neurons in your brain? All of them doing whatever they're doing effortlessly. Cells being nourished in the body effortlessly. The immune system doing its thing effortlessly. I'm hearing birds. That capacity is here without any doing on my part. So it takes no effort really to see God, to see the nature of this, because the seeing, this is the seeing of God. This is the realization of God, realization of reality in your very perceiving right now, which is here effortlessly. And if there's any problem when it comes to what I'm talking about, it's just simply imagining that this isn't it, that something else is needed, that something is missing. And so we're basically orienting to, consciousness has this tendency to orient to all of these narratives about what's going on here that can often suggest lack and limitation and problem and vulnerability. You know, we're off spinning in some narrative like about some incident that may happen or has already happened, and like in this narrative of like, is it going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? What can I do to be more okay? Right? And meanwhile, if we just feel if we reorient to the felt sense of what's actually here, there's just this alive presence, an indescribable presence that's supporting everything, and all is well. We're being held. By the groundless ground of everything. In which there is no lack, no incompleteness, no, because those are all just descriptions of something that can't be described, that is beyond any notions of lack and limitation. That term that we hear in some traditions, the ground of being, is a good one, actually. It is like a ground, the ground that's always here, isn't it? Because all there is being, the beingness of this moment, the presence of this moment. They're just different ways of saying the same thing. This, it's palpable, isn't it? It's like, it's concretely present, this beingness. It's here. And it's always here, this ground of being. The ultimate support. That's the basis of every appearance, the basis of every apparition, the basis of every momentary, flickering, shape-shifting manifestation. Beingness, the ground of being. And we don't have to make effort for that to be here. That is here. That's all that's here. It's the ground. People talk about abiding, and seeing, recognizing the ground and then abiding in the ground. It's like, there's just abiding in the ground, actually, because there's just the ground of being. It may seem sometimes as if we're not somehow abiding in the ground, not recognizing the ground, but that's just mistaking the description for reality, because the reality is that is the ground. That moment of having lost touch seemingly with the ground, is the way the ground is showing up. Because there's only the ground. The ground that's fueling the moments of recognizing the ground and fueling the moments we call not recognizing the ground. It's the ground. It's probably enough of me blathering on about the ground. What's on your minds with respect to all of this that you might be interested in exploring?
As you were, may I?
Oh, please, yes, go ahead, Zoe.
As you were talking, I was reminded of this thing when my daughters were small, like 3 and 5. The younger one asked her older sister, Taffy, how come you are you and I am I, and not the vice versa? So as something enigmatic and astonishing, I was reminded of that, and what you say goes with it. And today I was pondering on why I come to the Zoom meetings, because I'm not, well, it just came to me as a picture that it's like going to the forest for a walk. And the feelings I have, one after another, as you talk, is exactly like I'm taking step after step in the woods, looking at the trees, and all is so here naturally, effortlessly, and all is so God, for short of all the concepts that equal God. The doubt that rises in me is when it appears as though I lose contact with my ground of being. Mm-hmm. How is it that I feel frustrated? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Meaning I fail to pair losing contact with reality and the ground of being as my nature of being. It feels strange. It feels not soft. Mm-hmm. So there's this natural movement towards rejecting it.
Right, when it feels like it's somehow not connected to that ground, or not reflective of the ground somehow, there's a kind of a rejection of it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's me rejecting myself in a way.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And an emphasis on all of this seems to be the way it seems to be, right? It seems to be the way we describe it, right? It seems like rejection seems to be something that we call rejection, and it seems as if we lose touch with the ground in certain moments, and that we're lost in interpretation and narrative. And from one standpoint, we can talk about, like, qualitatively, it can feel quite distinct. It can feel like the flavor and the texture of sort of orienting very explicitly and directly to notice the beingness of this moment, let's say, as I was guiding us in, you could say, early in the call, can maybe seem like it has a different kind of felt sense to it, maybe, than being caught up in the flux and flow of life and thought and narrative. And but they're really almost just like, another way to think about that I think can be helpful is to just see that they're different modes. They're different ways that, like, the full-on engagement with life, it is different in a sense as a mode than how we're explicitly sort of exploring the feature of this in terms of the beingness of it. It's just got a different sort of feel to it, doesn't it? Or can have a different feel to it. And there can be this process where it feels like you kind of recognize the ground, you feel the reality of this beingness, you feel it right now, and then it feels as if you sort of maybe go off into some narration of the mind and seemingly lose contact with that, and then you kind of come back to the ground, and this is like the classic sort of movement back and forth. But at a certain point, it can begin to dawn on us that all that's ever happening is, you could say, a kind of a movement into and out of different versions of the ground. Because there's no... And that's a funny thing, because often when there's a kind of a direct encounter with the ground, there can be that sense of how it really is everything. It is that which is fueling all of this, as I was saying earlier, right? It's like giving rise to all of this. Everything is the ground of being. We have a sense of that, and it's delightful to notice that and feel that. And then, funny enough, we can then have some other experience where it seems like, oh, I lost contact with the ground, but we had just seen that the ground was everything. So it's sort of funny, isn't it? But it begins to be kind of this sort of dawning appreciation that there really is no losing, that nothing is ever lost and nothing is ever gained, in a sense. It's just reality dancing in all the ways that it dances. And then as humans, we could say we may still have preferences for certain versions of the dance over others, right? And yeah. I was reflecting on that this morning, on preferences, and how curious it is that there would be preferences even when you start to get a strong sense of the equalness of everything, that everything is the absolute reality, everything is this divine whatever mystery, everything is God. So why would I prefer one version of it over another if it's all that? Why not, though? You see? Because there's not having preferences or not having preferences, there's no better or worse there either. They're both expressions of. So there may be moments when there is no preference, and there's this sense of like whatever happens is what's happening. And then there's this kind of sense of equanimity that's just the natural equanimity of everything, just as it is. And it doesn't have to be one way or the other. And then there could be moments where, no, I want it to be this way rather than that way. But that then is just the next appearance of it, the next expression of it. And it's not a problem. It's just another way that it can appear. So then there's this increasing sense of a kind of, I don't know, one way I would say is sort of enjoying all of it. Like being totally lost and caught up in the mind. Like, well, what is that actually? That is just a pure, ungraspable mystery, just like everything else, isn't it? So it's actually equally beautiful as so-called not being lost in the mind. It's like all of our descriptions are just not actually true. they're, they're just not really encapsulating the infinite nature of this. They can't. They're not capable. Finite concept can't hold infinity. And all of our descriptions, including I'm not noticing this, which is just a description, a finite description of infinity. And that's why finite concepts they're not fit for the job of conveying what's going on experientially. So, but there can be, as I was saying, a kind of along the journey, if there is a journey of unfolding understanding of all of this, and in a sense that where one is sort of, we're orienting often so heavily towards all the descriptions that what I'm talking about, and I see this sometimes, when I'm teaching my grad students, where the orientation to believing our concepts are actually conveying what's going on here is just so strong that if this other perspective is introduced, it's just like, what are you talking about? It's like because it sounds crazy, to talk about that there's something that's the same about all of this fundamentally, when it's, as your daughters are pointing out, it's like they're completely different, they're so unique. Everything is so unique in its. This is the paradox. It's like there's nothing but difference from one thing to the next, and yet it's all of the same unfathomable beingness. So initially, there can be a process of reorienting to the sameness, to the equalness of it all, by exploring, as I say, what's common about all experience. And there's several doorways into that, but one is that everything is, the beingness of everything is what's common about everything, the presence of everything, or the knowing of everything, or the indescribability of everything. These are all doorways into, well, what is all of this ultimately, fundamentally, at its basis? And so that reorienting from just imagining there's only difference, and then basing our sense of, am I doing okay, according to how I'm describing everything, is this potentially a threat to me as an individual? I mean, all of that rests upon the idea that we can actually resolve what this is through our definitions. Like, we believe that we can, I mean, more or less, most humans do. But beginning to recognize that we can't actually determine what this is conceptually reveals the fundamentally indescribable equalness of all things. But then there can be this sort of next sort of step, or if you will, that then can see that when descriptions return, and even what we call an orientation to the descriptions return, that's not, the ground's never lost, because there's only the ground. So the descriptions don't ever, there's no obstacles, there's no impediments, there's no barriers, not really. Just walking through a forest.
Exactly. That's what you are. Your words, I mean, the framework of the frame of your wording and your expression, for me, is like walking in the forest. Exactly. And as I expand my ability to be one, is expands also, but also it's something, I don't know if I can express this. The need to be one with anything disappears.
Right. Yeah, because that
As
that can become a quagmire, because
that's
because it's much more about just a seeing that whatever was imagined to be separate can't be found. So it's not about uniting one thing with another thing. It's just seeing that that's
seeing the false.
they call it this kind of the way I'm speaking about this in one of the traditions in like Dzogchen, Ati yoga, which is a supreme yoga. And yoga means union, right? The yoking together of the individual soul with Atman, sometimes would be described like that. But the Ati yoga, the supreme yoga, is to see that all there is the yoga is already the case. The union is already the case. There's not spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to make union occur. It's like the wave of that is Zoe is being produced by the ocean of existence. There is the unity right there. There's no independent existence. The waves don't have independent existence. Seems like they do, but not really. It's just a trick. It looks that way. But we're being done.
Beautifully. Yeah.
Beautifully, amazingly, astonishingly, right? I mean, my God.
So we don't unite with other waves. We unite with the ocean, which is all the other waves.
Right, and even that is like it's a straight it's like it's impossible to use words, of course, but it's more like life wakes up and sees its life and sees that what it imagined was a separate wave was never separate, but there's no, there's just it's like what's hearing me right now is not an individual. What's hearing these words is the mystery of the universe. So that's why relaxations, as I was kind of pointing to the relaxation, which is, in spiritual practice, we're often like feeling ourselves as a separate creature, trying to unite with reality and God. And it's like, again, the ocean wave metaphor is beautiful, isn't it? Like, how much work does it take for the wave to be the ocean? Zero. You are the ocean is making you the wave right now. So there's just the ocean. Period. Let it be that simple. Let it be that simple. There's no effort required. And of course, even if effort is being applied and the seeming separate wave is trying to do X, Y, or Z to get back to the ocean, it thinks it lost. That is also the expression of the ocean. So there's no escaping the ocean. I wrote a song, maybe I'll sing it at the end, called No Returning, that uses that, plays with that analogy. No wave has ever been apart from the ocean. Nothing arising escapes the sea. There can be no returning to what you've always been. So you're never actually returning to something. You've never left it. Oh, why wait till the end of the call? Why don't I go ahead and sing the song now? Might as well. To remember the chords. I haven't sung it in a little while. No wave has ever been apart from the ocean. Nothing arising escapes the sea. No wave has ever been apart from the ocean. Nothing arising escapes the sea. There can be no returning to what we've always been. And there can be no returning to what we've always been. No wave has ever been apart from the ocean. Nothing arising escapes the sea. No wave has ever been apart from the ocean. Nothing arising escapes the sea. There can be no returning to what we've always been. There can be no returning to what we've always been. To what we've always been. To what we've always been. what we've always been. What we've always been. What we've always been. What we've always.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Sometimes the music can say it better than I could ever hope to.
Mm.
I was thinking about the music. Sameness looks like difference.
Yes, it does. That's its favorite pastime, is looking like difference everywhere, you know. No two grains of sand, no two snowflakes, no two daughters exactly alike, everything unique. And it's extraordinary. I mean, isn't that something so exquisite about how the sameness shows up as complete differentiation and distinction? Utterly unique. Every instant, utterly unique, and yet the same. I mean, such a beauty in that somehow. I don't know, to me, it's like an aesthetic that I find extraordinary. Every sound distinct, every sight, every little piece of color, every flavor. You know, we've never tasted, the moment's never tasted just like this. That's its distinctness. It's, and that's the funny thing, is that it can sound often when I talk about how all of this is this equal, ungraspable mystery, like it's some kind of bland sameness, but it's absolutely not that, is it? It's just so colorful and different. And like you said, this sameness shows up as distinctness, as difference. So it's so rich in its diversity. And never the same, but always the same. And that's why associating this or reality or God or whatever you call it with feeling a particular way or looking a particular way can become, well, is to in a sense miss it, because it's showing up as all feelings and flavors and textures, not one particular one.
Yeah.
That's important to kind of get the sense of that. But what's interesting is that one of the most powerful ways to get the sense of that is to discover the sameness in everything, to see that it is all of one thing. Every wave is unique, but to see the watery nature of all the waves. That nothing can ever depart from the sea. Even if everything that the sea gives rise to looks and feels and appears distinctly differently. It's sort of like another really powerful common denominator doorway into discovering the sameness is to feel everything as energy, to feel it all as energy. So all the flavors and all the textures are different configurations and patternings of, we could call it energy, but it's all energy. But of course, energy is, what is energy? I mean, it's just a word to try to convey an aspect of reality. It's energetic nature, it's alive nature, but
so at first you have to overlook the differences and then reintegrate it back in some way.
Right, exactly. See that underlying the differences is this basic state, if you will, stateless state of indescribable energy, consciousness, beingness, can't really say, but that can be seen by feeling what's here, not imagining that we know what's here, because that's when we have a tendency to seemingly miss it, because we're orienting to something finite that's not finite. But yes, the reintegration is to see that all of the differences, the dance of this one sameness. And without that integration, it can be easy to seemingly have lost touch with it. It's like, oh gosh, where did it go? I'm feeling frustrated now. I must have lost the ground of being. No. Yeah. Of course, the one that imagines him or herself lost can't be found either, So that's another potent doorway of inquiry, is to look for the one that imagines it's lost something. And you can just feel the way in which no boundaries can be found. So there's not even a wave there to lose the sea. There's just the sea.
Or examine the feeling of lostness.
Or examine the feeling of lostness. Exactly. That's the cool thing, is that it makes the inquiry easier in a sense, because you can inquire into the nature of anything. You don't have to focus on, a lot of teachings will emphasize the self as somehow that's the way to go, is find or don't find the self. But you can investigate any experience, any phenomena that we're appearing to be able to identify, whether it's a self or an object of experience. In either case, it's you end up in the same place, which is the inability to actually identify it and pin it down and find a boundary around it. So in a sense, all inquiries lead to the same discovery. That's convenient. Look anywhere, look at anything. And of course, look at what's here, which is the only thing you can really look at. Look at what's here right now. That seems to be here in the way that we imagine it is. And then look, feel what's here. And that its indescribable, uncharacterizable nature will reveal itself by just feeling the presence of it, because you just won't be able to get to the bottom of it. Something will be there. Something is present, clearly, right now, being felt, undeniably. But you won't be able to say what it is. You won't be able to know what it is. And then you're freed from all the ideas you have about it. And what a relief that is.
It reminds me of a joke, and says, what we have in like, we went to different schools at different times.
Wait, say that again, Ed. I didn't follow it. Sorry.
So what we have, what we have in common is we went to different schools at different times.
Right. It's funny, it's like it's all about like what we're orienting to, because we could be orienting to a narrative that's telling us, everything's problematic and things are unstable and falling apart. And then we're orienting to that. And then there's a reaction to that orientation, to that description, to that narrative, right? And meanwhile, feel what's actually here, and you just feel this ground, this stable ground that's right here. What do you mean falling apart? There's just pure stability of the ground. Always. When is that ever absent? If right now I'm in California, we have earthquakes here, right? And so the ground is sometimes not stable, the earthly ground. And it doesn't happen that often, at least that we're aware of, but imagine a moment where we had like the big one, we had a big one in '89 where I live, very close to where I am right now, in fact. And so at the level of description, it's like anything but stable in a moment like that. Like the earth is shaking. It's like it feels very unsettling at the level of describing it as earth shaking, unsettling. I'm having this experience and I'm potentially at the mercy of this experience, like it's dangerous, right? So that's all the perspective of the described world, right? Anything but stable. But meanwhile, the entire experience of instability, so-called, of everything falling apart, is itself pure stability. It is self the ground of being. And we can feel that. It's just a matter of reorienting from the descriptions to what's actually here. What's actually here is stability, the stability of the ground of being. That might be showing up as an earthquake that causes California to split off into the sea, but it's still the ground of being. The ground of being is invulnerable, because there's only the ground of being. There's not something outside of the ground that can harm the ground. There's just the ground of being, appearing as all the apparent other things that are supposedly other than the ground. So there's just the ground of being. Nothing can harm the sea. No wave can harm the sea, because all the waves are the sea. Yeah. So sure, again, it's, as I often say, it's a matter of perspectives, because from one perspective, we could say such a thing as vulnerability, human vulnerabilities exist, physical vulnerabilities, to use the earthquake example, or other kinds of vulnerabilities. So from within those frames of reference, certainly there's vulnerability. But from this deeper frame of reference of the actuality underlying all of this, there's no vulnerability.
So you shouldn't ignore either point of view.
No, I mean, I think that for the human, the human creatures we seem to be, ignoring those one or the other of the perspectives can, we could say, bring with it some amount of suffering. And it just depends, from the absolute kind of cosmic perspective, ignoring one of the perspectives is, so what? It's not, it's all just the dance of the sea. So from that perspective, it's not a problem. But for those of us, we feel ourselves as embodied, incarnated creatures, if you will, yeah, from the human perspective, ignoring, if suddenly, my house catches on fire, it is all the ground of being, but I'm the human creature might not survive that burning if it doesn't get the hell out of the house, right? So but all of that, I mean, even if we look at death, the ultimate thing we're trying to sort of protect ourselves against as creatures, right? I mean, what is death? Well, death is a pure mystery, just like life is. So in the ultimate sense, nothing dies. I mean, when a wave dies or returns to the sea, what happens? In a sense, nothing. Because it was always just the sea.
But it stops playing the wave game.
Right. But from the perspective of the sea, there's no problem with that, is there?
Not a problem, just
just a difference.
Yeah.
Just a difference. And of course, all these waves that we seem to be are going to return to the sea. Even if we've never left the sea, we're really going to return to the sea at some point.
That's the good news.
That's right. Yeah.
That is the good news,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, well, and to see that in a sense, that returning to the sea is already happening right now, right? Like, we've never, that's why that song is called No Returning. And that was, I think I mentioned it maybe on one of these calls before. The last chapter in my book is it's an epilogue about my mother's passing, called This Life That Is Also Death. And I think I had that insight many times before, but at her actual passing, which I was present at, the reality of that came very shockingly, brightly clear, that what we call death is the same as life. It's just presence. Life is presence and death is presence. They're both descriptions of presence, different ways presence can look. It's like if you're watching a movie and someone is born, that's what the light can look like, someone being born. And then in that same movie, when someone dies, that's what the light can look like, is somebody dying. But it's always the light. And my mother's passing, that was made very clear. Light returning to light, whether it's birth or death, it's always the same movement. Amazing.
And then the lack of boundaries, that, death is present even in life, and life is present.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the minute we're born, we're dying. I mean, in that sense, life is death. The birth of this moment is the death of this moment, like literally instantaneously. Birth and death are one movement. Experientially, that's not philosophy, that's our experience. That the birth of this moment is this disappearance of this moment, isn't it? So everything's in a constant state of birth and death every instant. Isn't that cool? So in a very strange but also real way, nothing ever is born. That's the Zen Buddhists call it the unborn. Because it vanishes no sooner than it appears. So it's so timeless that it never quite becomes something, although it certainly appears to take form and shape. But the form and shape is in a constant state of dematerializing and materializing into the next instant, isn't it? So what is the shape, as I like to say, what is the shape of this moment? What is the form of this moment? Can't say, can you? So here's the form of this moment. It looks like this, this form, but it's not holding still. So it's more like, it looks like this. It's not one, it's ever changing.
You can't say it fast enough.
No, I can't. It's way faster than me. That's quite something. What do they say in the Tibetan tradition? It's like the phenomena are like the flight path of the bird in the sky. Leaves no trace. So the moment leaves no trace because it's just gone. We feel a sense, of the echoes of what was, right? We all know that experience. In a sense, that's how we all, have some recognition. I can see right now, the only image I can see on the Zoom call is Zoe's image because she's got her camera turned on. And so there's the echo of what was, the familiarity of having seen Zoe before, seemingly. But the instant is entirely surprising, and all of it. Where is that? It's like the echo of the past, of our knowledge of what was here before, that gives a sense of continuity of things and people and places and things. Like I'm still in the same house I've been in for the last 3 years. Not really, though. That's the trippy thing. It's like, we're not being always different, but always the same. That's, again, the paradox. It's always helpful, just to remind everyone that when I speak about these things, to try and not merely relate to them as ideas, and I'm not suggesting that you are, but to just feel your own experience and see the way in which that I'm describing experience, not talking about ideas. Our experience is like that. It's disappearing and appearing and disappearing in a timeless flashpoint we can't grasp hold of. Slips through our fingers. Ungraspable. And yet here, to be enjoyed, even though it's not graspable. Go figure. I can still enjoy the moments even as they are not fully appearing because of their constant disappearance. I mean, that sounds like, crazy talk, but yeah.
What about the idea that language constantly contradicts experience?
Yes, it does. I mean, I might say experience is constantly contradicting language, but same difference. Our experience is just it's really so far from what language is suggesting. Because again, language is suggesting form and boundary, boundedness and limitation and separation, subjects and objects and cause and effect. And you can't find any of those things in the flash moment of experience. You cannot. You can't find subjects and objects in your experience. I mean, look. You find experience that is seamless. So, but language definitely suggests subjects and objects, doesn't it? Like, I went to the store, or I'm going to the store, subject and an object. And yet that entire thing, that the event of I am going to the store, or I went to the store, as an experiential event is a seamless experience. It's like space walking into space, walking into space, walking into space, or infinity. I remember I was sitting in a coffee shop one day and it's like, from one perspective, I'm sitting in a coffee shop. From this perspective I'm speaking about, it's like infinity is sitting in infinity. No subjects and objects. And that's a very delicious perspective. I must say, I find it to be. Because it feels so unbounded and so liberated and so playful and so alive. And so invulnerable, as I was saying. Because when there's no subjects and objects, there's no vulnerability, is there? Not that vulnerability is a bad thing. I don't mean it that way, but the belief in it can give rise to a lot of human suffering. I mean, we can even feel that we're at the mercy of our own thoughts and feelings. Like they're objects that can harm us. So right there's a subject and an object, and there's a sense of something could harm me. But in experience, there's no subjects and objects. So there's no vulnerability, there's no harm. It's just experience. I think what's interesting that I've certainly continued to find to be the case in my own life is that I'm sort of pointing to what you could call a kind of transhuman perspective, because the human perspective is one that feels like I'm a human in a world, right? I'm a person in a world. That's the human perspective. The transhuman perspective is there is no person and there is no world. There's just this. And there's not a person looking for something else or a person who could be harmed by something else. There's just this seamless whole, right? And what's interesting, though, is that feeling that and touching that I mean, one of the sort of consequences, or I would say fruits of that, is that the full breadth of the human experience that can include, all of it, all the things that can happen. It's like, it's as if we can have all those experiences of sorrow and joy and all the human perspectives. There's more, there's less of a sense of them being problems that I somehow have to avoid, because they don't represent, they're not fundamentally problems. So I'm free to we could be having a very difficult experience, and there's this recognizing that the difficult nature of it is only one perspective on it, that there's this other perspective on it, where it's just this seamless experiencing, flow of experiencing. So it's like, now there's just more freedom to have all, have the full range of human experiences that aren't the threatening things we imagine them to be. So recognizing our transhumanness frees us up to be more human, in a certain way, in a very real way. Because they're one and the same thing. They're not two separate realities.
When I experience that, I feel more love, simply. And I feel like I can take it all. People around me could freak out because there's a war, there is COVID, there's death. And when I'm there, I can take it.
Absolutely.
War or death or whatever, because
right.
To me, my vocabulary about that is the context. I go to the cosmic context.
Yes. Absolutely. It's like you're meeting it from the ground,
Yeah.
You're meeting all of the slings and arrows of human misfortune from the ground, and knowing something different about it from that perspective. Something very different about it, that it's just it's that deep, the absence
of resistance also.
Sure. Yeah. It's like, exactly, because there's less motivation to try to avoid or resist certain experiences, or because there's less belief in them being somehow problems that could harm us, and which doesn't mean we might not take steps to address them either, because that's also fine too. Of course. But you're right. It's that other perspective is like, it's more seems to bring forth a kind of a capacity to be with all of it, the full range of it, and
a welcoming.
Yeah, I mean, that's its nature in a sense. The ground welcomes all of it because it is all of it. So in the ground, there's no resistance. Not really. I mean, is the ocean resisting any of its waves? It's being all of those waves. So talk about a different perspective. It's like, right? It's like, and you can feel that in any moment you're being visited by some difficult circumstance or experience. And it's that little shift of orientation to feel like this is literally the very ground of being arising as this moment, not as a concept, but feel the truth of that. Feel that this, just like this moment, even if maybe nothing in particularly difficult maybe is occurring, but this moment is the ground appearing as this moment, is life appearing as this moment. So then some, difficult thought or self-criticism arises, and it's like, that literally is just the arising of life. And from that perspective, is it a problem? It changes it entirely. So it's like, it's free to be there. I mean, it already is there. It's ridiculous to say it's free to be there. It is there. It's like, that's again, Ed, it's like language is too slow. It's like the whole notion of the welcoming and the accepting is like, that's too slow too, because it's already welcomed. This moment's already welcomed, isn't it? It's already allowed. It's already accepted, to use that language. We're late to the party. Well, we're right here. We're not late to anything, but but we are that welcoming of everything. That openness to everything. It's absolute, absolute unqualified, unconditional openness, isn't it? Reality allows for everything. Lovely as always to be with all of you. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining me.
Bye.
Pleasure. Be well, take good care, and we'll see you another time, I hope.
We will. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.